Hello everyone, in today's video I will be going over 4 examples on this worksheet just to help you get started. So first off we are doing trig review, trigonometry. If you remember, that is all of this stuff here. This information on this sheet is what you will have access to on the final. So all of this, you don't have to memorize it, it will be given to you. Just make sure you know how to use it. I have plenty of copies of these if you want a copy of your own, but you will get a fresh one on test day. So I'm going to come back to this as I go through each problem. So, first section 1 through 6. Use the triangles to find the ratios for each trig function. All we're asking you for on these is the fraction that goes with that function. So for example, number 1 is sine, and from our reference sheet, sine is O over H. So that's the fraction I'm going to use here. Now to figure out what O and H are, I have to go to the angle M. M is in this triangle, it's right here, so I'm going to mark it. So remember, we use our angle to label our HOA in that order. H is the hypotenuse, it is across from the 90-degree angle, so that's going to be H. And O stands for opposite, and opposite as in opposite our angle. So our angle here is M, so the angle opposite that one is 16. Sorry, the side opposite that is 16. So that's going to be O, and the last side is A, so 30 is A. So now filling in, O over H, O is 16 and H is 34. So we have 16 over 34. This is correct, but technically we can simplify this down, so I'm going to do that. We can divide 16 and 34 by 2, and that will give us 8 over 17. And that's all I can do. I can't divide 17 by anything, so I won't be able to divide further. You don't have to simplify it down to get it correct, but it is always a good practice. So you're going to use angle M for 1 through 3. When you do 4 through 6, notice that it switches to angle Z. So make sure you're careful of that. You're going to have to do this labeling process again with angle Z to do 4 through 6. 7 through 12, these are extremely easy problems because all you have to do is plug them into your calculator. Find the value of each ratio, round your answers to 4 decimal places, and I am very strict on this. So let's do number 7, sine of 12. Few reminders, depending on your calculator, it's going to look different, but in my calculator, notice these 3 letters here, D, E, G, that means degrees. You want to make sure your calculator is in degrees. You will definitely know if it's in the wrong mode when you try to put this in, and if you get a different number from me, unless you just clicked the wrong button, your calculator's in the wrong mode. So if it says like RAD, like rad, or grad, those are not the right mode. So in this calculator, you would hit this DRG button, and notice your 3 settings. You want this one, and you use these arrows to go back and forth. So I want degrees. In other calculators, it might just be a single letter like D, R, or G. Again, you'll want it in degrees, D. Okay, sine of 12. Type it in just like so, and then we round to 4 decimal places. So we're looking at 4 numbers here. So you go to your decimal and you count 4 past the decimal. 1, 2, 3, 4. This 4th number here is a 9, so I'm going to look at the next number because I'm rounding 9. It either stays 9 or it goes up to 10. So I look at the next number to see, and that's a 1. Definitely too small to bump this up. Again, 5 or higher, that's the rule. So this is a 1, so it won't work. So this stays a 9. 0.2079. That's the full answer. Again, 4 decimal places. The only answers that will have 3 is if the number in the 4th spot were a 0, then you can drop it. Otherwise, you need to have 4 numbers here. All right. The last 2 problems I'm going to do are 13 and 14. They're examples of your typical trig problems, and there are 2 different types. So let's start with 13. Here we have a right triangle. This side is 8, this is x, and then our angle is 36 degrees. First, you want to mark the angle we're using. It's always going to be a given angle of some sort. There's going to be something there, or they're going to ask you to solve for it. You will never use the right angle for this, ever. So once we have our angle, we're going to use it to identify HOA in our triangle. We label those sides. H is across from the 90, so that's the 8. O is opposite or across from our angle, so that's going to be the X. A is the last side. Notice it's blank, so we aren't going to use it. So O and H. Now you ask yourself, which function is O over H? Sine. Sine is the one that uses these two letters. So I'm going to write out this basic equation here, meaning I'm not going to fill in any numbers yet. Sine of angle equals O over H. The reason I do this is to set it up, make sure I have everything in the right place, so that when I plug my numbers in, I'm less likely to make a mistake. Now I'm going to put everything in. Sine of the angle is 36 equals O is X, H is 8. Now, my X is in the fraction on the right side of the equation, so I can cross multiply here to solve for it. So I'm going to cross one way first. Cross kind of. That would give me 8 times sine of 36. Reminder, I always put the trig function last. That's just typically how you do it. If you were to flip these around, that doesn't change a thing. 1 times x is just x. Now, after you cross multiply, I want you to always do this as a good practice. Pause for a moment and look at what you've written and ask yourself, have I solved for x? Because that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get x by itself. And if I even draw that line through it, you can see x is on the right side of the equation completely by itself. So I'm done moving things as far as getting x by itself. I know what x is. It's 8 times sine of 36. I just have to figure out what this actual number is. So this is when I use my calculator. And I didn't give any directions for rounding. That was on purpose. You round as you want. For me, if it's a side that I'm solving for, I round to the 10th place. So that would be where the 7 is. The next number is a 0, so obviously this is going to stay 4.7. And that is all. Number 14, I'm going to follow that exact same process, but my problem is going to turn out a bit different. This side, this is a 6, not a 5, it's a 6. X is my angle, and this side is 4. Step 1, label your HOA. H is the side across from the 90, it's the hypotenuse. O is the side across from our angle, or opposite our angle. And 4 is the side that is left, so A. Notice that O is on a blank side, so we can't use it. So we're left with A and H. A and H, the function that uses those two letters is cosine. So I'm going to write this on my paper. Cosine of angle equals A over H. Now I fill in my numbers. Cosine of the angle is X equals A is 4 over H is 6. If you compare the two problems to each other, the one I just did and the one I'm currently working on, the big difference between the two is where X is. On the left-hand side, on the left equation, X is in the fraction over here. It's on the right side of the equation. In the equation I just built, X is on the left side and it's in the parentheses with the cosine. So cross multiplying here will not do as much good. It will just make the equation a bit more complicated. So we're going to do something else. To get x by itself, I need to remove the cosine. Let me remind you, this is not multiplication. This is not cosine times x. This is cosine of x. It's a function of x. And to remove a function, we have to do something a bit special, and it changes from function to function. For sine, cosine, and tangent, we have what we call their inverses. Those are these right here with the negative ones. I'm going to show you two ways of showing the work. How you go about it is up to you as a person. So let me show you the long way. This is how I taught it originally. But I know it's a little too much for some people. Cosine of x equals 4 over 6. So then we take the inverse of both sides, the inverse cosine, to get rid of the cosine and leave just x. So that looks like this. So you do it to both sides, and then inside the parentheses, you're going to put what was in the equation. And then, since I have inverse cosine of cosine, those cancel, leaving just x. And then I'm going to bring this down. And then all I would do is plug this into my calculator to get an answer. Now let me show you a slightly quicker way that might make more sense to a lot of you. Now you have to be kind of aware, very much aware of what you're doing to understand what I'm about to do here. So here's another option. X represents the angle. I'm missing the angle in this problem, not a side. So if you notice that you're missing an angle, then look at these. They all say angle equals. So that means that since I have cosine, I'm going to go to the cosine one. X is the angle. That's what I'm looking for. So I would just fill it in as it is here. So I would start here, and then my next step would be x equals inverse cosine. A over h, which I've already filled in. That's 4 over 6. I basically just use this as a formula, in a way. The difference between what I just did and the first thing I did is this step here is the work. It's explaining how you go from here to here. If I cut that out and just look at my reference sheet and basically use the formula, if you will, then I'll get to my answer quicker. I get to the same place. I'm just not showing this step here of how I get there. So if you feel comfortable jumping from point A to point B, literally, then go for it. But if you want to show this work, if this work makes you feel complete, as it actually does for me, this is why I show it, then go for it as well. Just do what makes most sense to you. Regardless, you're going to get the same answer. Inverse cosine of 4 over 6. Just use our calculator for that. Remember, on this calculator specifically, and a lot of calculators similar to this one, to get to the inverse functions above your sine, cosine, and tangent buttons, you need to hit this second button first. I've already pressed it. As you can see, second is highlighted. So now I'm going to click cosine, and the inverse pops up. 4 divided by 6, make sure you are using the division button for the fraction, not the fraction button itself. That has a different use. Now here, since x is an angle, I typically will round to the whole number. So I would round this to 48 degrees. Now if you don't like changing how you round in each problem, you could still do to the nearest tenth. If you want to use whole numbers the whole time, that's up to you as well. It's your choice, just make sure you round correctly. Alright, that is all that I have for this video. Hopefully this is enough to get you started. If you have any additional questions on something I did in this video or on any other problems, feel free to reach out to me either via email or in person. Otherwise, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!